I think it's kind of one of those undeniable truths that if you stay in a treehouse or something similar, like, you could apply this to different nature experiences, but it's going to breed you wanting to experience nature more. And I mean, I know what happens is you value it. I mean, anytime you learn about something, you have a better understanding and you value it more. And
this is the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. Revitalizing the world together. Welcome to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. This is your host, Neil Collins. It is a show that is supported by our work at Latitude Realty. In it, we explore our natural and built environments and how they can be used as a force for good. The show sets out to inspire impactful ideas, meaningful change, human wellness, and ecological restoration through interviews and easy-to-digest conversations. Our guests range from industry leaders to iconoclasts, from both well-known figures to everyday people leading extraordinary lives. This is a show for people looking for education and inspiration on how real estate can be done differently. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Regenerative Real Estate Podcast. We have Django Kroner on the line. He's having a call in. We've got some Zoom difficulties, but that's okay. Django, you started the Canopy crew, and I almost don't want to tell people what that is. I just want to jump into your backstory and let them find out. Where are you from, Django?
so I've come from a family with 4 kids. I'm the youngest. We live in the city, but Cincinnati's actually got a lot of green space. And my folks and I were fortunate to have lived in a yard with a lot of big trees and some woods behind it. And that was kind of where I spent my free time. And I mean, it was, I guess, like most youngest siblings, you have like the wrath of the older siblings, but also the freedom that comes with it. So it's funny because people always ask me, like, how'd you get into trees? And as I've had to answer that question, I've chipped further and further back into the history of my life. And I realized that actually the true story is that my older brother, Miles, would come after me on a pretty regular basis. And I learned at some point that I could climb trees and I could climb them a lot better than he could. And it became my way to escape his wrath. So I just climb up there and wait his anger to cool off. And then I'd come back down.
Oh man. And I love that. I was recently reading a book called The Overstory, and they do such a good job of weaving in the narratives of people's stories about how it intertwines with the life of trees. And it almost reminds me of that. So you grew up kind of getting used to trees. And then I know that you got experience building with Habitat for Humanity. What bridge us between your running away from Miles to you're starting to build? How did you get into that?
Well, before Habitat, I'm going to tell you that like climbing trees turned into my main hobby right around junior high. I don't know, for whatever reason, I was kind of going through like an antisocial phase, and I would spend like 4 or 5 hours in a tree a day. And I just like pick a tree, climb up it, and try to access every point, like try to climb out each limb, try to get to the very top. And then I'd go and I'd watch YouTube videos of orangutans and chimpanzees climbing around and then try to mimic their movement to like get as good as I can at it. And it became like a place of like a sanctuary, like something I really loved. And then as I was kind of becoming an adult, like phased out of that, like I guess most people do. And after I graduated high school and then did AmeriCorps in Milwaukee, where I started working for Habitat for Humanity. And to be honest, that was kind of random. I chose Habitat, but it was fairly just kind of on a whim. I think I was just, in a space where I was kind of down for whatever. And that was my entry into construction and, real kind of just basic framing. They build relatively simple houses fast. So it was a cool perspective. And I got a little bit of everything, got to see how projects got done, got a little bit more taste of like work ethic and just how to work and working with a wide variety of people. And it was funny because my role was supposed to be a crew leader, and I was, 18 in a new city. And the crews I was leading were oftentimes people who just moved to the country or at least didn't really speak English. So it's like kind of a double challenge of how do you help people or lead people to do something when there's a language barrier, and also they were, usually much older than myself. So it was a good challenge.
That sounds really interesting. I did a bit of volunteering with Habitat for Humanity and appreciate the work that they do and really how it can be a home for those kind of wayward teenagers or 20-year-olds looking for something to do, but also wanting to make a difference in any way, shape, or form or fashion. It sounded like you found AmeriCorps, and I ended up finding Peace Corps. I know that you did blossom into a climber, a rock climber, so it wasn't always trees. How has that really fed into your story?
Well, while I was in Milwaukee, I met my now friend Nick, who was a rock climber, and he took me out. We went rock climbing outdoors, and I think that some people just have a instinct to climb. So I think that I already knew that I had that, and it just basically clicked. And it was a way, it kind of reintroduced me to like this special place of being in nature and having this like unique, intimate relationship with the landscape that I liked about tree climbing. And that ultimately became an obsession, which led me to decide that I wanted to craft a lifestyle that totally revolved around rock climbing, and led me to move to the Red River Gorge in Kentucky. So that was like, like my intro to trying to, do like full-time rock climbing lifestyle. There's a family friend who was managing a cabin rental business. So I got a part-time job, basically just kind of building cabins with him. And I was living in a tent in his backwoods, which I was fine with. I was basically doing kind of like a work trade deal. And he was a timber frame cabin builder. So I was learning some more exciting construction stuff from him and developing my climbing skills. And after about 6 months of living in a tent, the gorge is like it's like almost a rainforest. It's really humid, super hot, lots of exciting animals crawling around on the forest floor. And there's just one morning in the summer when I woke up and I was like basically in a cloud and waking up drenched in sweat, and you like kind of get out and shake your shoes out, make sure there's no snakes or anything in there. And I was looking up at the trees around me, and they looked so breezy and dry and pleasant. And I was just kind of down in the mud, and I was like, oh man, it would be nice to build a treehouse and live in it. So I asked Aaron if I could build a treehouse on his property, and he said, go for it. And that was kind of the seed that started something much bigger that I didn't know it was going to happen. But so over the next year, I kind of just collected scrap wood and did as much research as I could about treehouse building. And I had a little bit of an advantage because of rock climbing. I knew obviously how to climb, and I knew a little bit about rigging, which is a super crucial part about treehouse building. So by that winter, I had a platform up. It was 45 feet up between a sycamore and a poplar, and there was a creek that ran between the trees. And it was a pretty grand spot. Like the platform was just a platform, 10 by 12, no walls, no roof, no railing. I had a rope ladder to get up there, and I moved up, and it was like I ended up living there for 3 years. And I did add a railing and then a tarp for a roof, and then eventually a metal roof. But it was some of the best, it was profound. I had an awesome time up there. In the time I kind of made it like my like life's mission to like intentionally expose myself to the outdoors and just see what that was like see what it was like to not be an inside person. And I think it was actually really satisfying. There was a weird thing where all my friends were like going off to college, and I was kind of alone in the woods. And there was like, there's no cell service, no Wi-Fi, and in the treehouse itself, I didn't have electricity or water or anything. So it was just really simple living. And I'd spend my days doing a little bit of working and a lot of climbing, and then I'd come home and just basically sit up there and listen to the tree frogs and hang out. I think it made me really comfortable to just be with myself, which I think is something that maybe a lot of people don't really get to experience, or maybe not until later in life. So I feel fortunate for kind of accidentally having that experience.
Yeah, 3 years. That is a shocking amount of time to be by yourself and to really go off grid. Random stories like my brother-in-law and his girlfriend, they actually moved up to a little town outside of Homer, Alaska, and started to do the homesteading thing. And it's now to the point where they have such a hard time integrating into the city because they're like, man, it's noisy and a lot of pollution, and it just feels different.
Yeah.
You're used to being off grid. And I wonder if you have the same experience. Like right after that 3-year stretch, did you move into a house, or did you move into a new tree house? Where did you go from there?
Well, yeah, I thought I was going to basically do that forever. I kind of did succumb to loneliness, and I was getting I was kind of achieving my goals with rock climbing and getting a little bit bored and frustrated. And so I realized that I had to have some bigger goals. And I was in this position where I realized I wasn't really going to be able to meet girls or make money doing the life that I was doing there. So I was like, okay, I'll go back to the city. And I basically just moved back in with my folks for a while and started kind of shopping around for jobs. And I was just posting. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing or where I was going with it. But I ended up stumbling into an arborist, a professional tree climber. And it dawned on me that so something about rock climbers is everybody's trying to figure out how they can rock climb and also make money, which is a difficult thing to do. And it dawned on me that you can get paid to climb trees. And that was one of my biggest aha moments. And I started kind of apprenticing with him, and that turned into, okay, I can learn about tree health and how to take care of trees. I can start making money for, the first time in my life. And all of that was going to help me build a cooler tree house. So that that started down this path of just like, oh man, now I had, when you're hanging out in a tree house, which I obviously had done a lot of, all I can think about is additions. So I'm like sitting up there like, oh, I could, put a bridge out to that tree and then put a room there. And, that could be the kitchen. And so I had all these, I had a notebook full of concepts and drawings and stuff that I thought I, would want to try eventually. And that was kind of climbing trees became my means to build more tree houses and simultaneously learn more about how to be a good partner to a tree. If you're going to have a tree, if you're going to live in a giant plant, you got to know how to take care of it and listen to it. And so that, yeah, it all kind of just clicked and started flowing in that direction.
So let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, you started building these things. Did you first start building for other people, tree houses, or was this like you needed to go build something? Like, did you know that you're going to be doing treehouse rentals from the very beginning?
Not really. So I mean, the thought had definitely crossed my mind, but I had seen the hustle of the rental business, and I was coming from a place where I thought like people who worked a lot were suckers. So I saw how much work that took, and I was off, I didn't like it. So I didn't think I wanted to do that. And, I guess that maybe this is a common story, but like I basically over time, I became attracted to working hard, and I got sucked in, and all of a sudden I was, workaholic. And it started by just kind of putting the word out there and building little tree houses for people's kids and doing these one-off projects. And that was kind of the model that existed publicly that I knew about, just with, builders like Pete Nelson, who's like kind of what at the time was like kind of a budding famous person building tree houses. So I knew that like you could work building tree houses for people. And then I quickly realized that you got to deal with other people's imaginations and needs and budgets, which was super challenging. And so I decided like, okay, well, I'll build for other people and use that as an income source and an education. And then I'll simultaneously sprinkle in these personal builds where I'll build them, be able to have creative freedom, and then rent them out. And this became an obvious path because one thing that I loved the most about living in a treehouse was having like a sleepover, and I'd just have somebody who's like traveling through. I'm like, well, you want to stay up in the treehouse, and then they'd like get up there, and either by bedtime or by like morning, they'd be like, man, this is like, they'd have this inspiration moment where they were really grateful for the experience, and they kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, I guess you could live like this, or like they just think it was crazy and were inspired, and that obviously feels good to inspire people. So doing the rentals was a way where I could directly share that experience with tons of people, and trying to derive meaning out of it all. Like I felt like that would get people to appreciate the woods, and then in return want to have it be something that we cherish and protect, which I obviously feel. So it was a good balance, and something that I'm really glad that I ended up doing, because it's, ultimately become my kind of main purpose in life. But when I built the Sylvan Float, which was our first treehouse, that was in about 6 years ago, I'll say. We built a Sylvan Float, and that became our first kind of baby. And yeah, it's still going strong, and I smile every time I hike past it.
What an incredible story, how you really, the business model came out of the sum of your experiences. I think those are the ones that are so unique and so enriching, in the fact that you can really expose people to not only, hey, we can build this way, but like there's a purpose and a mission behind it to inspire and to protect. Do you find that people are picking up that vein, and like, do you see them really galvanized towards conservation?
It's hard to say, because I don't do any of the guest management at this point, or I really never have. But I do know that, what I do get a taste of is like simple things like being tagged on social media and seeing people's experiences that way. And then also just bumping into people, and they're like, oh, I know you because I stayed in your treehouse, and they'll tell me their story. And I know I think it's kind of one of those undeniable truths that if you stay in a treehouse or something similar, like, you could apply this to different nature experiences, but it's going to breed you wanting to experience nature more. And I just know what happens is you value it. Anytime you learn about something, you have a better understanding, you value it more. But what was actually kind of a surprising thing was they became this, like, we have some journals up there where people will make little notes or leave notes, and the tree houses, I never expected it, but became this place where people would go to have these special life experiences. Like there's tons of people who have proposed in the tree house, or had 20th wedding anniversary, or moments of like love and connection. So that's like a really cool added bonus that I never knew was going to happen.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm going to ask you, Django, because I come from a real estate background. I'm curious how you put all this together. Were you buying land or leasing land to build the tree houses on?
It's kind of a funny situation. So there's the Daniel Boone National Forest, which is a massive national forest. And then kind of inside of it is a state park. And then there's private land sprinkled throughout it. And in the 70s, there was going to be a dam built, and it was going to get flooded. And it was kind of, going to be turned into this like more kind of, I guess, classical tourist area. So there's there was all these plots that were subdivided, like in preparation for a subdivision. But then there were protests, and the project got canceled, and this private land just kind of sat there. So there's these tiny little plots that are floating around, and that was kind of the key, because it was a way for me to buy land with like very little cash flow, and also, no credit. So that was, another just kind of lucky thing that happened. So I buy a small piece of land, build a rental, start renting it out, and then, kind of just snowball that concept, buy some more land, and then, started to buy bigger plots. But yeah, it's all been buying property. And now I am in some arrangements where I have partners where there's like technically at least set up.
How many rentals is the Canopy crew running now?
We are currently about to finish number 8.
Hey everybody, this is Neil. We are going to get back to this great conversation in just 1 second. But I think it's fair to say that right now we are facing some pretty unprecedented challenges in the 21st century. I mean, you name it, environmentally, socially, economically, we've got some big problems that we need to overcome. And that's why, for me personally, and the people that work with us at Latitude, we want to dedicate our time and our energy so that we are not only working to put food on the table and a roof over our heads, but also make the world a better place. And so if you are at all interested in combining your sustainability values with a very powerful financial model of real estate, then I highly encourage you to check out what we are doing at Latitude. We are creating something truly special with a tribe of change agents that for now is working across North America, and hopefully one day in the future, with you coming on board, we can be working across the globe. So please check us out. You can go to www.chooselatitude.com, or you can find us on social media at latitude.realty on Instagram, and we are also on Facebook. Okay, let's get back into it. All right, do they do pretty well on a rental basis throughout the year?
I mean, I never expected it to be like, I never even thought of it as a business in the beginning. I just wanted to try some ideas out building tree houses. And I didn't care if it was like, I just thought it'd be, like it'd make some money, but whatever. But it didn't take long for them to kind of catch on and start renting out, where it was like hard to, if you were a guest, it was hard to find a night available. And then, it would turn out where they would be booked out for a month. And obviously we're, still relatively young company, but COVID rolled around and we were, real nervous, as everyone was around March. But at this point, we're booked out like 3 months, and pretty much every night's booked, and so they're doing great.
Oh man, that's awesome. And did you ever bring utilities to them, or are they still off grid and giving homage to your first tree house that you had built?
I knew from the get-go that I wanted to have like a gradient of amenities. Like I wanted to offer some that were hike-in, off-grid, super simple and rustic, and then some that were more creature comforts. And because that's how you like get the most people in the trees, is like you offer different kinds where different people are going to be attracted. So right now we're building in an area. So like there's basically we're on a different old road and this road is a little bit more front country. So we're taking advantage of that and doing some more high-end builds that do have more creature comforts. So I'm actually excited to get back to the off-grid ones, because I do kind of like building those more. But for the foreseeable future, we're going to be building ones that are basically fully decked out like a normal house.
I got to tell you, I came across your social media site, Canopy Crew, on Instagram, for anybody that's listening, and it just looks incredible. I mean, it's got this like rustic charm that's super romantic, and really unique. Like I know of only one other treehouse kind of destination in the country. There might be more, but they haven't come on my radar, and I certainly don't think that they're kind of as popularized as what you're doing right now. Um, and I've always thought like, wow, you're building something in a living thing that no matter what is gonna impact the physicality of the structure. What have you had to like? Is it still so new that it seems like the tree is just your anchor and it'll forever be that way? Or have you had any insights into how you're building on a living organism?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, got to pay respects to the forefathers. Michael Garnier, Pete Nelson, Jake Jacobs are these like older guys who have started building tree houses, roughly 30 years ago, and became obsessed with it and developed science and hardware to attach to trees in a plant-friendly way. They put a lot of work in and like a lot of science in. So I was fortunate to kind of come in on the wave right after or shortly after that stuff was established. But before, like right now, we're in this like treehouse rush kind of globally. And I was fortunate to come in early on that. But personally, I, was experimenting on my own, trying out some of my own techniques and making a ton of mistakes. I mean, like myself and like the people that kind of are now form the Canopy crew, we've known that trying things out and making mistakes was going to be part of the process. And there's just no way around it. If you want to push the limits, then that's what's going to happen. And yeah, I mean, we've had small structural failures we'd had to go and repair. We've had trees grow faster than we thought. We had more movement in trees. We've had our minds blown by the power of wind, and we've had to remedy ailments that occurred to the trees. But all in all, it's been like hands down, you're just amazed at how resilient trees are, and they just hold you up. You're like, I always feel like you're in this, like the tree's got like, you imagine, you look at like a big dad holding his newborn baby, and you're like, man, like imagine being cradled by these giant arms. And that's kind of what like being in a tree is like in a tree house. The tree's just got you. It's like, it's this beast of a plant, this giant living being that's gently swaying in the breeze. You won't even notice it unless you pay attention, but like it's moving, it's growing, it's alive. And it's just cradling you as you sleep throughout the night. And it's like a special, it's like a slow burning, intimate relationship where you're like, just like Jack and the Beanstalk style, you're living in this plant and it's supporting you.
That is so cool. I can't wait to come visit. That's going to be an experience to remember for a long time.
Yeah.
Wait, any human casualties along the way of renting these things out?
No, we've had a great track record. And I mean, we obviously, safety is a huge priority. So we're thinking about that throughout the entire design process. And so, yeah, no, there's a lot of redundancies. You might have mistakes, but anybody who does work at height, like, knows about redundancy. It's very important. You have to have systems in place so that if one thing fails, you got something else to back it up. So everything we do has redundancies and is basically over designed, over engineered to limit anything bad happening. But like I always look at it, if you're in a cabin in the woods and there's a storm and a tree falls over and lands on your cabin, like it's gonna suck. And if you're in a tree house in a tree and there's a storm and the tree falls over, it's gonna suck. Like there's inherent risks if you're not in a concrete fort. It's so you got to just certain point you got to be like, okay, well, I'm still going to go out and enjoy life.
I hope that goes in your guest book. It just the tree falls over in the middle of the night. That's really gonna suck. Oh man. Well, hey, where's the Canopy crew going from here? Like if we wanted a book, we're going to the Red River Gorge in Kentucky. Do you have global expansion plans and world domination? Or are you looking to just kind of focus down on your area? And I know that we didn't even touch on, you're still doing arborist work in Cincinnati, which is really cool. I mean, do we want to hit that even real quick? Do those two businesses work together?
Yeah. So this like Canopy crew feels like it's become something, it's like a beast of its own. And now I'm just like holding on. But we do still have the arborist service in Cincinnati, and it is now like fully entwined where if we do a removal, like say there's a dead tree it's looming over someone's house, and we'll take it down. We'll then mill that wood and use it to build the tree houses. So we have a whole milling operation. We use it in the furniture. We use it in just about everything, siding, railing, just depends on the species that we get. And, it's a good juxtaposition because like climbing trees for work is actually like it's a fast paced, but also very Zen job. Whereas construction is very slow and technical, but then the satisfaction is like big picture satisfaction. So the two mesh well together. I'm pretty content doing what we're doing down in Kentucky right now. I like, we were building on the road for a while. So now this is kind of new to us, having a home base and having a shop. And that feels really good. And it feels good to settle in a little bit. So I'm sure we'll build other places again, but for the time being, we're home, and that feels good. And we're starting to experiment with some exciting stuff. This current build we have is not only connected to trees, but it's also bolted into the side of the cliff. So there's a kitchen bath treehouse, and then you take a spiral staircase straight up, and there's a large sandstone cliff, and the bedroom is hanging from an overhang. So you have like the height and the exposure is only getting more exciting, which we're diving into cliff mounted houses that can interact with the trees in new ways. And it's cool because you can like be in the tippy top of the tree, which is hard to do with a tree house. You're like in the sturdy part, but now you can be on a solid deck, but like be interacting with the very tips of the canopy, which is a whole new perspective.
This went exactly where I wanted it to go. I'm continuously amazed at the creativity in the model and the circular thinking between the arborist business and your rentals, and then infusing in really a climber's mind and intrigue into space and there's emotions that come with it, and now into the physicality of an experience for people. So this is exactly what I was hoping whenever I reached out, and I can't thank you enough for your time, and I'm glad that we were able to connect. And I'm serious, like we're going to figure out how we're going to come down to Kentucky, check out your projects, and it'd be great to see what you've got going by then and where you've taken it. Okay, everybody, that is a wrap. This is another just great episode that I'm so glad that you're able to tune in. And thank you for being interested in regenerative real estate. What we are trying to do is help people and planet thrive together by using the built environment as a catalyst. And so I've got a couple big asks for you. Number one is, can you please go to wherever you're listening to this podcast, leave us a rating and review. Those actually go so far. And since this is such a passion project for us, we really want to be able to attract the best thought leaders from around the world. Second is that if you really like the content that we're putting out, you can find us on our own Medium publication called Regenerative Real Estate. We also have a very active community on Facebook, which is called Regenerative Real Estate and Design, which you can request to be a part of, and we would love to have you. And third, this goes to what we do every single day, helping buyers and sellers demystify sustainability by working with people that want to either buy a property and are trying to figure out the financing of how do I actually live out my values? How do I put that water catchment system on there? Or how do I go finance a solar panel PV array? Or maybe I want to live closer to nature. And what are the properties that are out there that I can do that? And so we represent buyers like that. We also happen to represent sellers that maybe they've already invested in sustainable features. Maybe they have a living building or a LEED certified project. we want to help tell that story. So much of what goes on in the real estate industry is transactional thinking at best, and it translates down into agents just really don't know anything about sustainability. And for us, we think that the value is there, and we want to help highlight really the intrinsic value of it, not just the bedrooms and the baths and the square feet of what typical marketing goes on. So if you know of anybody that wants to buy or sell these kinds of properties that we're talking about, please reach out to us at Latitude, and be sure to subscribe for another great episode coming up next week.